Today we're going to answer the question, is the real estate market rigged? Does it favor Wall Street, corporate America, those giant hedge funds, or are small investors winning in 2025? So let's be honest, the real estate market has always felt a little rigged when it comes to these faceless corporations with their just endless piles of cash sitting on the sideline, not just grabbing a little piece of the pie, but gobbling up the pie. And so for years, it's been the story of like the rich are getting richer and corporate America is buying everything. Come on, Blackstone, leave something for the little guys. But something's just happened. And so these numbers have just came out and it looks like the script is really flipping over for us. And that these giants, these behemoths are retreating in 2025 and in 2024. The large institutional investors have just hit their lowest level since 2007 across the United States with their purchases. And in their place, the small investor is starting to dominate the market and rise. Small investors are defined as owning 10 or fewer homes, and they just captured a record-breaking 59.2% of all purchases, according to a recent study by Realtor.com. So the question is no longer if they can win. They're actually like, what we want to discuss is how are they doing it? And what's the playbook that you should be looking about? And are they getting lucky, or is the little guy just figuring out where to play the game and how to play the game? Okay, so part one, we're going to talk about the rigged game is changing. So investors, the giants are moving, but they're not panicking. So large hedge funds, Wall Street, their single-family home purchases are down 8.7% year over year, and they're using less cash. This isn't because the market is collapsing. It's because there's a different sales niche that's really started to rise up. That's the build to rent. And they've been shoving money into data centers. They've been shoving money into warehouses. What this is, though, is it's leaving a vacuum, a hole where that large investor has moved out of the market in the traditional housing market for the small investor to step in. The other thing that's happening is debt has gotten so expensive that it has also slowed down the large investors. So think about it. If they've got to go deploy $100 million in capital and you, our listener, only has to deploy $200,000 in capital, which is easier to deploy? Which is easier to find a place to invest and park that money? And this retreat leaves us with an opening. It's a strategic pivot with these large firms that's creating massive opportunity. So the net impact is that it's been the smallest since 2007, and that's leaving that hole, which is allowing us to step in. The headlines, though, are talking about how the market is churning. And so investor sales became 10.8% in 2024. So why is that churn rate so high? The reason that churn rate is so high is this is taking into account when you go buy a property and then you turn around and you flip the property and you put it right back onto the market. Flippers were creating a lot of inventory over the last year in the market. So it says the churn rate was higher than normal. What's interesting with some of these doom and gloom people who get on their social media accounts talked about how this was a sign that the real estate market was crashing. You can't say investors are buying too many homes. You can't say they're selling too many homes and say that all of them are signals for a crash. Math doesn't work that way. But the doomers and the gloomers keep coming out and saying everything is breaking. So how are the small investors winning? This is what you, our subscribers, really care about and what you're here for. How do we win? The small investor has been on the hunt for affordability, and their strategy has been uber simple. They're just simply going to buy cheaper houses. The typical investor purchase in 2024 was $282,000, which is $70,000 below the national median sales price. And so they're not trying to compete in the overpriced areas. What they've been doing is they've become masters of the affordability arbitrage. They're looking for the most affordable product. Well, where has this been happening? They've been dominating the Midwest. Surprise, surprise. The hunt for affordability has been led in specific geographic regions. States like Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas. In 2024, Missouri had 21.2% investors. Holy cow, that's very high. And in the top 10 list, the lowest was Alabama at 15.9. So it was 21.2 to 15.9. Almost all of this was in the Midwest. So in metros like Memphis or St. Louis, investors are regularly buying properties for less than $150,000, and this is a price point that a lot of these institutions will ignore. Another way to think about it, if you live in a high-priced metro like us here in Seattle, what could you purchase below the median price? What's going to be more affordable? Because once again, most of these Wall Street types are going to ignore that property. And then the small investor is using smart leverage. Like we were talking about before, the big institutions have massive capital to deploy, and they've relied on all cash offers. But what's happening is a small investor is more quickly adapting to the market. And right now, all cash offers are at their lowest point since 2008 by the small investor. Now, this isn't a sign of weakness. This is a sign of intelligence. This is a sign of capital preservation. This is a sign that the professionals are left and the wannabe investors, the TikTok investors, are not in the market anymore. And no offense to someone who's learning on Instagram or TikTok, that's a good place to start. But you got to start taking action and be careful who you're listening to. So I want to give you 7 ways that the smart investor is leveraging these investment opportunities. Investors are using conventional financing. We've been doing that for a long period of time. That's your standard. Go put 20% down. So if you're buying a $600,000 property, you're going to put $120,000 down. If you're buying a $200,000 property, you're going to put 40 down. And your goal is to increase the value of the home, increase the rents, rehab it, and then keep it or turn around and flip it and sell it. A lot of what you're seeing with these smaller investors is house hacking. House hacking, like using an FHA loan, getting in for 3.5% down, owner occupying the property, getting the property performing, and then moving out and renting that first one. In ideal situation, if you're going to house hack, you should be purchasing a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, something that's got multiple units so you can get a little more bang for the buck, and the FHA is giving you that low down payment. Once again, Wall Street can't compete with this. Let's not forget about the flipper's friend, aka hard money. Hard money, of course, you're going to pay 10%, 12%. You're going to pay anywhere between 1 to 4 percentage points on top of that. But this is something where if you can find a home that needs a massive amount of rehab that's currently not financeable, go borrow hard money, flip the property, and then decide, should I sell the property or should I just refinance it and keep it? Next, private money. And we are seeing more and more private money. Private money, how that differs from hard money is, generally speaking, the terms are going to be a little bit better. Generally speaking, it's going to be from a private individual, not necessarily a business. A lot of times for us, private money comes out of people's self-directed IRA accounts. Okay, so they have self-directed IRA accounts, and then they loan us money out of that. We do flips, we do construction projects with this money. Sometimes we do development projects. You have to start asking. You have to build a network. And then you have to find capital partners that are willing to lend their private money, and what are they willing to lend on, and what do they feel comfortable with, and what are the terms that they expect. In other words, the origination fee, the percentage of interest rate, and the term of the loan. Is it 12 months or 60 months? The next creative play that we're seeing a lot of is seller financing. I believe because people are not trusting the banks as much as they used to, and the bonds have started to trend down, that money is starting to come out of the bond market. Money is coming out of money markets and CDs, and this will continue to happen as rates trend down, and you will see more and more seller financing. Us personally, we have done more seller finance deals in the last 24 months than I have in the previous 10 years. You just need to start asking. Actually, even on the way in today, a person I did a seller finance deal with, they called me and said, hey, we're thinking about selling another property. Would you take a look at it? I said, absolutely. I got to walk into this appointment. Can you text me the address? I'll take a look at it later. When would you like to meet there? Why? Because we've built a good relationship. We've paid our payments on time. We communicated well. So they're literally coming back to us a second time to ask us if we possibly want to do another deal. Love it, love it, love it. And then last but not least is the equity last but not least, is number 6. The equity multiplier, the HELOC. So you've already got a property and you've got most likely like an owner-occupied property and there's equity in there. You can go borrow that money to go purchase another property. You can also go get a line of credit against life insurance or your stock portfolio. And one of our favorite scaling methods is the BRRRR and the big boy BRRRR. The BRRRR is we're going to buy it, we're going to renovate it. After we're done renovating it, we're going to rent it, we're going to refinance it, we're going to get our cash back, and then we're going to go and repeat it. And the big boy BRRRR, instead of renovating it, we're just going to build it from the ground up and then rent it, then refi it, then get our cash back and then repeat it. When you can find a deal that does this is an absolute phenomenal strategy for you to scale, but you're also seeing more and more people do this right now. I was having a discussion with a young man who was asking about investment properties. Like, why is now a good time to be an investor? Why? Rates are high. 2, the economy isn't perfect. 3, we got tariffs hiding in the background. 4, we got geopolitical events. So there's not as much buyer activity happening. So sellers are more likely to take your little bit lower offer. They're more likely to accept terms. They're more likely to accept concessions, more likely to give you seller financing or delayed closings or closings subject to you selling your other property. This is the opportunity. When things are not perfect, make more offers. And then what's happening on a metro level? Okay, so here in the Seattle metro, and they define the Seattle metro in this particular study as Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue. So unfortunately, we didn't get the North End, Everett. We lost you on this one. Usually I include Everett in there. But they said in 2024, investors represented 7.2% of all transactions in our area, with an average sales price of $738,000 and then a median sales price of $750,000. But we only represented 6.1% of the sellers. And this was actually true across most of the nation. Investors bought more than they sold. Why is that? 1, we're here for the cash flow. That's why we bought the asset. We want to depreciate it. We want it to appreciate. We want the cash flow. Number 2, if you have good debt, and so I'm talking debt that's lower than today's interest rates, if you've got a 5%, a 4%, or maybe you're super cool and got a 3%, there's no reason to sell that property today because you can't replace the debt. So 80% of the mortgages in the United States are below 5% right now. So that's why some of these sellers aren't selling. So we're actually at a net negative impact when you compare the number of investors purchasing versus selling. All right, let's flip back to the battle of the small investor versus the hedge fund. So how is technology now equalizing what's happening? Before, Wall Street had all of the big tech. They had all of the property tech, the real estate tech, the AI. They could pay analysts to hang out with them on staff, and they could have multiple staff members. Well, what's happening now with AI and all of these apps and all of this access to information? The small investor is more empowered, more ready to compete in today's market more than ever. There's every piece of data you could ever want. Now, don't let the data pull you into analysis paralysis. This is the problem with too much data. I have been guilty of this too. So I'll put together my numbers, put together my spreadsheet, and then at some point, I just got to go to my CFO, Rochelle, and I got to sit down and I got to defend my case. I got to say, this is what we're thinking. This is why we want to buy it. What do you think we should do? Boom, let's rock and roll. Because there is access to so much data, there are times I catch myself spinning around in a circle and not making a decision. Don't let that be you. Time is money. The other thing the small investor has that the big investor doesn't have is they have agility. They can flip it. They can rent it. They can keep it. They can put debt on it. They could sell it on a lease option. They could rent it on a lease option. All of these vehicles. Wall Street and a hedge fund, it's generally someone else's money. and that someone else's money comes with strings attached to it, and they can only do what the money was allotted for based on the model inside of the fund, the syndication, or however the capital was raised. So Wall Street is always tied, and they can't be agile. But this is the benefit for me and you, for our listeners, for our subscribers, is that we can do what they won't. And so we could outmaneuver these behemoths. They're trying to deploy billions. We just trying to deploy hundies. I just need hundies out in the market, sometimes millies, but I don't got to put billies out there. And we can go do the small deals. So when they're trying to deploy that level of capital, they have to go buy 10, 20, 50, 100, properties at a time. You and I can go build a detached accessory dwelling unit or a dadu in a backyard and make great money and phenomenal returns. I just ran the numbers on one that we're going to do. It's a 26% return. That's like, we need more. We can do infill. Wall Street's never going to do a little 4-lot plat, a 3-lot plat, 6 townhomes, a 4-plex, a duplex. They're never going to go through and find a 10-unit apartment complex to value add. It's just too small. So as you're thinking about this, the big money's over here and they need a lot. So you just need to be under the big money category where you're competing with normal humans. And the future is small and smart. Looking at part 4. So are we in a new path to home ownership? So this part, I love it. I hate it all at the same time. Let me explain. Investors are increasing the competition for first-time home buyers. Let's be real. If they're buying these affordable homes, that's hurting first-time home buyers. And we know across the United States that we have not built enough homes, and we're a little over 4 million units behind. And then here in the Seattle metro, we're slightly worse than most areas. And the reason it's like that is all you got to do is go to the coasts. And generally speaking, if you're on the West Coast, it's more liberal. It's harder to build, harder to do a development project. We're just further behind. We have more red tape. And so the savvy home buyer, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get pre-approved. They're going to have to work with a great agent. Our team's happy to help you, rsg.com. We're here for you in the Seattle metro. You're going to probably have to do a little hunting off the market. You're going to have to look for other opportunities. You may even have to pair up with an investor who's building that home or flipping that property and be the back-end buyer who steps in and buys it from them when it's done off market or gets to pick out the tile and the carpet and the colors. And the game has got new rules. So winning in 2025 is not about having the most cash, which is clear. Otherwise, Wall Street would be winning. Wall Street has more money than us. It's about being the smartest, the most agile, the most intimate market knowledge and specific market knowledge and having a strategy that's agile. I could flip it, I could rent it, I could keep it, I could wholesale it, we could create private debt on it. We can use effective technology. This is the small investor succeeding in today's market. Can this winning streak continue? I believe this winning streak for the small investor will absolutely continue until rates come down. As rates start to get into the probably, let's call it the mid-5s, watch out, Wall Street's going to come back with a vengeance because it makes sense. When you look at Invitation Homes, which is one of the largest holders of single-family homes in the United States, yes, that's one of those big bad wolf, the hedge fund guys, their whole model was built on having the assets perform around 5%. That was how their original model was built. So with debt being around 7% right now, their models just don't work. But the problem is as debt gets cheaper, Wall Street comes back to play. So what I want you to do is I want you to take advantage today of this opportunity. But Anton, the market's not perfect. That's the opportunity. See, when the market's not perfect, it shows up looking like hard work. I'm going to be blunt with you. You're going to have to make more offers today. You're going to have to ask for more terms. You're going to have to get creative with your financing, your down payments, or maybe your private money or seller financing. You're going to have to do more work to find a good deal, and that's okay. And be willing to hunt off the market and find an amazing team to help you. And I'm talking the real estate broker, just like us here in the Seattle Metro. I'm talking the lender, the contractor, the title company, the escrow company, and everyone in between. So, is the real estate game rigged? No, it's not, but it is competitive. And there are metros like here in Seattle where it's really competitive. And yes, it's always going to be competitive because we are behind on inventory. And the powerful are always going to lobby. They're always going to spend money. They're always going to try to bend the rules in their favor. But the data right now is undeniable. And that's that the game is changing and it's in your favor and my favor as the small investor. And today we're winning. You've got to put in more work. But they're not winning with more money. That's what I want you to get out of this. They're winning by being faster, by being nimble, by making more offers, by getting better terms and structuring better deals. They've abandoned the crowded area where the big investor is still playing, and they're going into these small niches and proving that you do not have to have the same amount of money that Wall Street is. So here's your blueprint. Find the best property that is the most affordable. Find a niche that you can dominate and you can understand. Use AI and technology. Do the small project that the big boys and big girls won't do. Stay agile. Pay attention to the trends. Look at population. Look at demographics. Look at employment. And be prepared because the market will shift again. But I want you to ride this ride. You got 6 months, 9 months, we might have 36. It all depends on rates. And the future of real estate is not just for the big investor. It's for you, the small investor, our subscriber. If you liked this podcast and this video and you want to know more about the real estate investing playbook and land development and how to play all these games in real estate, hit that subscribe button, drop your questions and comments below, and let me know where you think we should be investing right now throughout the United States or where that you're buying. I'm going to respond to all those comments. Hey everyone, let's win together. Thanks for hanging out with me.